Welcome back to the second portion of our frame rail and floor installation here at Restoration Design. We're working on our 1973 BMW 02 series. As you can see here, we've got our frame rails and everything done, and I already have one portion of the floor already done. I've taken the time and I've cut our opening and everything. What I did for cutting our opening is I used the new part and I trimmed the new part to the size that I wanted it trimmed to and placed it in and scribed around the new part and then cut just on the inside of my scribe line. Once I had the whole size here, I then began to fit the floor portion in. When I was trimming the new section of floor, I took into consideration where my weld was going to be. It's always a good idea to put a weld on a radius. It's a lot easier to hide the weld on a radius than it is if you do it on a flat surface. Also, when doing your butt welds, you'll create less wrinkles from heat if you use the radius for your bead. To put it in place, with the assistance of my coworker Norm, he's going to give me a hand to put the butt weld clamps in order to hold the floor pan in place properly. Okay, just hold there 1 second. Yeah, that's good. That's good. There we go. Snug it out. There we go. All right, we've got the floor fit in place, and we've used the butt clamps to secure it and to help keep the sheet metal even so that the weld doesn't end up a little askew. There's going to be a little bit of hammering and banging to get this nice and perfect because the original portion of the steel isn't all that great. Actually, it is pretty good. It is pretty good. There is a bit more hammering that I got to do on this portion here. The next step after I get the floor tacked in place would be to release the strap that I have on the frame rail here and get the frame rail secured to the bottom of the floor with a few self-tapping screws and possibly even fill a couple of welds in there just to make sure that it stays where it's supposed to be. Once I've completed doing all of the butt weld, a side note, while you're doing your butt weld, just make sure that you leave lots of space between your welds. Use air, pretty much any method you can think of in order to keep it cool, because with these old BMWs, the steel is really thin and brittle, and it will warp drastically if you put too much heat to it. The next point that I'd like to make is when you're installing your part, make sure you get lots of weld-through primer in there to prevent future rust. Like I've said before, the reason why we're doing this is to get rid of the rust, not so that it comes back. I flipped the car over so that I can show you the other side of the floor that we've completed. As you can see, this corner right here is all brand new. We fabricated a one-off in order to be able to replace this and the other side. I do believe I mentioned that in the last video. I've taken the time and I've ground all the welds and I made everything look nice and neat. I'd just like to remind you guys that if you do your weld on a radius, as you can see right here, the weld comes out fairly nice and it's a lot easier to hide on a radius than it is in a flat spot. The next thing you'll notice here is I already have the pedal cluster bracket installed. The reason why I installed the pedal cluster bracket is we need it in place in order to locate the gas pedal bracket on the inside of the floor. This pedal bracket can be a little bit tricky to install because you really don't have any measuring points to go off of. So what you need to do is you need to use the pedal cluster. So I've already installed it, but unfortunately our actual gas pedal is in no condition for us to be able to position it. So what I've done is I've taken an old section of the floor. As you see, the condition of the floor was definitely in need of replacement. And I repositioned the pedal bracket where it was and cut it out, and I'm using the section of floor as a jig to position where the gas pedal bracket goes. So just fits right back in there. And then of course you would tack it in place so that it would stay where it is. All right, so I have my jig in place. I'm going to use my scribe to mark out a line. Now that I have the positioning marked, I can take my grinder and I can grind the area so that I've got a clean metal to weld to. Now that I have the paint removed from the area that we're going to weld to, I'm going to take the jig that I made and I'm going to put it back in and re-scribe my line. Now that we have a scribed line in there, we have a position that we can place the gas pedal bracket and tack it and just double check to make sure that the pedal is going to sit in a good spot before we go ahead and complete our weld. Like I said, the next step is to locate and tack in the gas pedal bracket so that you can double check it to make sure that the pedal is in the right position. One of the things I'd like to mention is the gas pedal bracket is something that we can't find anymore. So I had to save this one and clean it up with the sandblaster and give it a coat of paint. I got the gas pedal bracket in place and welded in. I'm going to clean up the welds with a wire brush. And when the welds have cooled down enough, I'm going to give it a shot of weld-through primer. Thank you for joining us here at Restoration Design. I got a lot more work ahead of me finishing installing this floor. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out more videos. Also, I'd like to mention that these are just suggested methods of installation. If you're unsure about things, please consult a professional. Thank you.